In the last episode of Origin and Development of Islamic Scholastic Theology, Kalam or Ilm al-Kalam, we're going to discuss the theological dialectics, atoms, accidents, and the nature of existence. The Mutazilites' metaphysical stance on the atoms and accidents, which they term occasionalism, become a point of contentions, particularly regarding the durability of the accidents. They posited that everything in the world, excluding God, consisted of two elements: atoms are indivisible particles and accidents, a'rad. While most Muslims accept this view, al-Naẓẓam dissented, adhering to the Aristotle's thesis of the divisibility of the substance. Among Mutazilite thinkers, there was debate over the durability of the accidents. Abu al-Fudayl and others considered certain accidents as perishable, like will and motion, while others, such as the color, life, and knowledge, were deemed durable. Al-Naẓẓam, on the other hand, reduced all accidents to motion, arguing that even motion couldn't endure. For the Mutakallimins, especially the Ash'arites, this metaphysics served to uphold the absolute power of God. They argued that God's direct intervention not only brought things into the being, but also sustained their existence from one instance to the next. And according to them, things would cease to exist if the God ceased to create the accidents that maintain their existence, including the accident of the being, kaun. The Ash'arites adhered strongly to this view to vindicate God's absolute power. However, the Mutazila couldn't fully accept this worldview without contradicting their belief in the man as the creator of his deeds. Hence, many Mutazilite thinkers sought to modify the metaphysics to align with their ethical beliefs. Furthermore, the Mutazilites' belief in the divine justice led them to deny the possibility of intercession, affirm inevitability of the divine judgment, and assert that the eternity of the punishment in the hell. They argued that God's justice required the fulfillment of the decrees, including the promises of eternal bliss for the faithful and the threat of the eternal damnation for the wayward. This view precluded the idea that intercession or the divine mercy could alter these decrees, as doing so would compromise the God's righteousness and leave the creature uncertain about the ultimate faith. The theological disputes surrounding the nature of God were central to the debates between the various Islamic theological schools, notably, of course, the Mutazila, traditionalists, and the anthropomorphists. The Mutazila emphasized the unqualified unity of God, Tawheed, aiming to refute the doctrines of anthropomorphists, or Sifatiyya, and other groups that ascribe the positive attributes to God. These groups interpreted Quranic verses literally, attributing bodily traits like face, form, and limbs to God. Some Shiite sects, influenced by the Jewish convert Abdullah ibn Saba, even defied their imams, fostering the anthropomorphism within Islam. Less extreme literalists and traditionalists acknowledged divine attribute distinct from the God's essence, reducing them to the essential qualities like the power, knowledge, and speech. The Mu'tazila, however, sought to maintain the God's unity and simplicity by rejecting the idea of eternal attributes distinct from his essence. They believed that such attributes implied a plurality of the eternal entities alongside God, and hence the compromising its unity. Al-Ash'ari, a prominent opponents of the Mutazila, vividly describe their view of the God's unity, emphasizing his transcendence and otherness. According to him, the Mutazilites affirm that God is unlike anything else, devoid of the physical characteristics or sensory traits. They stress his indivisibility, timelessness, and eternal attributes, maintaining that he cannot be perceived by the senses or compared to anything in creation. Overall, the theological disputes reflected differing interpretation of the Quranic verses and philosophical concepts, with each school is striving to uphold its understanding of the God's nature while safeguarding His unity and transcendence. Mutazilite doctors, the philosopher, in rationalizing their views of the God's unity, were influenced by the various philosophical concepts, including the Aristotelian notion of God as pure actuality of thought, and the Platonian idea that God, transcending thoughts and being, can only be known negatively. In rejecting the notion of the series of the eternal attributes in God, the Mutazila aimed to uphold His absolute unity. However, reconciling this with the Quranic depiction of a personal and concrete deity made it challenging to the completely abandon positive attributes, particularly that of the power. To address this challenge, Mutazilite scholars made various attempts to rationalize the divine attributes while maintaining God's unity. Some, like al-Naẓẓam and many Mutazila scholars from Baghdad and Basra, argued that when we say God has knowledge, power, or life, we are simply affirming that He is knowing, powerful, living, etc., and therefore not ignorant, impotent, or dead, as such attributes would be unfitting for Him. And other interpreted statements about God's knowledge or power are as referring not to God's possessing these attributes, but to the object of the knowledge and the power. Some, including Abul-Huzal and his followers, agreed that God has attributes like power, knowledge, and life, but they understood these attributes as being identical with God Himself. And finally, of course, some scholars such as Abbad ibn Sulaiman and his followers question the legitimacy of the framing the discussion in the terms of whether God has attributes or not, suggesting that such language is inadequate when discussing the God. The Mutazilite theologians employed various dialectical devices to grapple with the challenge of the attributing positive attributes to God while maintaining His absolute unity. Ibn al-Ayadi argued that attributes should be predicated of God only figuratively or metaphorically. Abul Hussein al-Salihi maintained that the statements about the God's attributes simply distinguishes Him from the other beings without implying that their attributes exist in the separate manner. Al-Jubai and his followers, while affirming God's attributes, reduced them to effects of the God's essence and denied that some attributes like hearing and seeing could be predicated of God unless actively related to their object. Abu Hashim refined this view by stating that God's attributes are the states or conditions of His essence, not existing or knowable except through the entities they belong to. These nuanced positions reveal a sophisticated attempt to rationalize divine attributes, maintaining God's unity while acknowledging His attributes in a meaningful way. Regarding the eternity of God's attributes, the Mutazilites made distinctions between essential and active attributes. Essential attributes like life, power, and knowledge were considered eternal and inseparable from God, while active attributes like love, will, and speech were seen as the contingent and not essential to the concept of God. The concept of the divine will and speech raised significant debates. Some Mutazilites consider divine will a contingent accident, while the other distinguish between the essential and active will in God. Similarly, there were debates about whether divine speech could apply to God, with some arguing that God's will is simply the act of creating or commanding, and His speech is the act of recognizing or declaring. These debates show the complexity of the Mutazilite thought as they try to reconcile philosophical concept with theological principle, often leading to intricate and nuanced positions on the nature of God and His authorities. The controversy or the nature of the Quran, whether it is created or uncreated, become a central theological debate in the early Islamic history, particularly during the reign of Caliph al-Ma'mun. The Mutazilites, among other theological schools, asserted that the Quran is created, a view that was officially adopted as the state doctrine under the al-Ma'mun's rule. And this decision sparked intense theological division within Islam. The Mutazilite position on the created nature of the Quran led to the political conflicts and the emergence of the strong opposition from the conservative and orthodox factions, notably by Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, despite attempts by subsequent caliphs to maintain the Mutazilite doctrine, such as the Mu'tasim and al-Wathiq. It faced significant backlash with the accession of al-Mutawakkil, who reversed the official stance on the Quran's creation. However, the decline of the Mutazilite influence didn't mark the end of the legacy. The Mutazilite school continued to extend influence in the theological circles, shaping subsequent developments in the Islamic orthodoxy. The Ash'arite school, which emerged in the 10th century, inherited many theological methods and concepts from Mutazilites despite the eventual rejection of the Mutazilite doctrine. And the subsequent history of Islamic theology saw the dominance of the Ash'arite school, which incorporated elements of the Mutazilite thought while emphasizing tradition and orthodoxy. Nevertheless, Mutazilite's idea continued to influence the theological debates and the development of Islamic theology, with scholars like al-Qadi Abdul Jabbar remaining the significant figure and well in the 11th century. This is in the end of this last episode. Thanks for watching.